OCO, and welcome to Exploring Cherokee History. My name is Kristen Mosier, and I'm the Cultural Collections and Exhibits Manager for Cherokee Nation Cultural Tourism. Today we're going to be exploring the life and legacy of Jennie Ross Cobb, the first known Native American female photographer. The Cherokee National History Museum is celebrating her legacy in an exhibit titled Through the Lens, which is on display now through March 20th, 2021. We're going to speak with Karen Shade, author of the Through the Lens exhibit, and Jennifer Frazee, the historical interpreter at the historic Hunter's Home in Park Hill, Oklahoma, who served as a consultant for the exhibit. Jennifer, could you tell us a little bit about Jennie Ross Cobb and her connection to Hunter's Home?
So Jennie was a cousin of Minerva and Amanda Merle, and Minerva was the person that Hunter's Home was built for. And so Jennie actually lived there in the house after the Civil War around the turn of the century. And so while she was there, she was taking photographs and things like that. And later on, when the place became a museum, she was the first curator. And so she used her photographs and everything to get us back to how the site was before the state took over and all the changes happened.
What would life at Hunter's Home have been like while Jennie was living there?
So at this point in time, the house the house and property they're getting ready to go through allotment, and the place is still kind of run down a little bit. So they're making repairs and while they're living in it. It's around the turn of the century. So there's no electricity in the house or anything like that. They're still farming the land, and they have gardens and everything out there. So it's just pretty much a typical turn of the century type place, just in a really big house.
So just for our viewers out there, some historical context on allotment in case anyone's unfamiliar with that. It was a process that occurred in the late 19th and early 20th century, where Cherokee Nation lands were split up into individual parcels of land rather than being held communally like they'd previously been done. So just to provide a little bit of backstory there. Karen, what were you most surprised to learn about Jennie?
Well, I think it's the fact that she's not better known. She had a servant's heart, much the same as her father, Robert Bruce Ross, who was the grandson of John Ross, the principal chief of the Cherokee Nation, who fought against the removal of the Cherokees from their southeastern homelands, and also who helped bring the Cherokees back together once most of our ancestors had been removed to Indian Territory in the 1840s or by the 1840s. So it isn't surprising that she had such a civic-minded approach to her life. She had those examples of, not only her father, not only her great-grandfather, but there are many community and tribal leaders that came out of that family. So they were very well known. She taught at Cherokee Nation public schools for, I think it was maybe a period of about 5 years. She graduated from the Cherokee Female Seminary in 1900. And for about that period before she got married in 1905, she taught at several schools. In fact, there is a picture that she took of one of those schools. She has several of her young students in front of that school, and that is believed to have been the Christie School, which I think is in Adair County, or was in Adair County. The research says that she taught at several schools all around Cherokee Nation in those days, and some of those areas were very remote. So it took her away from her family and her friends, which must have been, rather difficult. But even after marriage, she ended up in Arlington, Texas, where she became really well known for her gardening and for her horticultural skills. And she even had an award-winning garden that she planted at a local park. So she was very civic-minded. That's not surprising, but just that we have these incredible photographs from her, this collection that has managed to make it into our hands more than 100 years later. And that she, did so much for her community. That's still a little bit of a mystery to me. that she isn't better known for those things. But that being said, there was a surprising amount of scholarly research that's been done on her. So, yeah, some they don't always seem to agree on all points, but it's nice to see that she has been covered in some circles.
Right, right. And Jennifer, what do you think? So some people have asked me, why this photographer? Why now? So why do you think Jennie's images are worth examination today?
Oh, they simply for the house and for the interest in the area here, because they show us, as historians, especially there at Hunter's home, we're always saying, oh, I wish I could just live just for 1 hour back at that time, just to be able to kind of look around and see what was going on. And those images give us that opportunity, so we can see with our own eyes exactly what the house looked like and what the people looked like while they were there, the furniture they were using, the foods that they were growing, because some of her photographs are taken of the gardens, and you can see squash plants and things like that growing through there. So that's part of the reason why that's really important for us. Another reason is it documents the turn of the century in Cherokee Nation. There's a lot of misinformation going on around about Native Americans and Indian country, where people think that, I get people coming in saying, oh, well, I've never seen an Indian before, and where are the teepees, and she is documenting this part of at least Cherokee Nation that's showing that they weren't, in leather and teepees. They were living in, really nice houses, had great furniture, had these huge institutions. It's really important for things like that, so that people can actually see, because whenever they look at her photographs, after they've said, I've never seen an Indian before, and where are the teepees? And they see those photographs, they're like, wow, that's amazing. So it really helps with that impact too.
Jennifer, many of Jennie's images are refreshingly candid. Why do you think she was able to capture these images in such a way that you really saw the person that she was? Instead of it being a posed portrait, you really get an idea, in a sense, of who is in the photo. You get it, the playfulness of the children. You get, almost the personality coming through in the photo. Why do you think she was able to capture that?
So some of the photographs that we see from this time period are kind of staged, like you say, posed, where people are sitting there taking these professional photographs. But she is doing what we see a lot of people nowadays doing, where we just take our cell phone and take selfies and things like that. And she was able to capture images where you can see how people lived, because she was doing it in that way. So they weren't just, I don't think that she was intending to catch the pictures of just the people. I think she was actually intending to catch that moment that was being lived at that time.
Karen, do you have any thoughts on the candid nature of some of Jennie's photos?
Well, at that time, from my understanding, cameras were getting smaller, much more compact, and the technology was evolving rather, so that these cameras could capture more light. So they could capture a degree of motion that perhaps cameras from 20 years before probably couldn't. You see so many pictures that are formally posed. People are, standing up straight in a studio setting. Lights are perfect to be able to capture this image, and they have to stand still for, a minute or two. And it's not easy to do, especially if you're smiling. So you end up with, a huge log of photos of people that look like they're very stoic, they're very still and formal. Whereas the camera that she had, the ones that were being marketed to particularly young women in those days, were lighter. You could go out. It freed you up to be able to, take them on walks, to be able to, just have them around the house casually. I would say that they're probably much more complicated than what we have today, technologically, for certain. But the ease of just being able to take that camera to different places and have it on the spur of the moment and be able to capture those situations without having to put up lights and, extra extra equipment certainly helped. And I don't think we'll ever know why she chose to capture those moments, but I'm really personally glad she did. So,
Jennifer, so many of Jennie's images are taken of Hunter's home, both inside, outside. One of my favorites is actually of just the parlor, and you see the fireplace mantle, and you can see what pictures they thought were important enough to put on the mantle, and you can see the portrait of John Ross hanging above the fireplace. So how integral were these images in restoring Hunter's home whenever it was acquired by the state in the 1940s?
They were indispensable, really. So whenever she took those photographs, she saved them, and she had the glass plates there, the negatives that she was able to look at. And I think that they probably played a really large part in her being able to gather the furniture back and know what furniture actually belonged there in the house. But not only that, she had traveled to antique places around the region and was looking for items that were similar to the ones that she recalled being there in the house. And then later on down the road, when we don't have any written records from her as to what furniture she has, or why she picked, why we have this particular piece of furniture or this photograph or something, whenever we look at it, we think, well, who is this, I wonder? And then we look in that picture, well, she thought it was important enough to have it in there, so apparently it had some kind of connection. So when you don't have those written records or a diary that says, hey, I put this here because of this, we can kind of infer from those photographs what's going on. So I still look at them today whenever I'm setting things up for events and exhibits and such. So they're really still important to us.
Would you say that gives you a way to really see Jennie's touch on Hunter's home today?
Definitely. She was the one that started getting all the furniture and everything back in the first place. And she was the one, I think, that started putting the house back to how it was whenever the Merles were living there. So through seeing the items that we have in collections today and the photographs that we have of the way she kind of arranged things, that helps us to be able to see, oh, Jennie put this here. This rocking chair was Jennie's. She was sitting in this rocking chair in front of the fire here in the dining room. This back porch here, was this way because it was important to her. So that's how we're able to, and I think part of that is also not reminiscing exactly, but kind of remembering how life was before, allotment and everything. And so that's another reason why I think that really is helpful to be able to see, because it's a remembrance of hers, and so it's important to her, and you can tell that whenever you look at those photographs.
That's great. Karen, I wanted to know, what were your expectations for the exhibit prior to beginning its development, and what do you hope visitors take away from the exhibit?
Well, as you know, exhibit had undergone, some changes from original plan to make it in multiple locations. But when it was adapted just to go into the National History Museum, we definitely wanted it to have more of a gallery kind of feel, as if she was going to have her first exhibit of her work for everybody to see. I don't believe that she ever had an exhibit of her own work before in her lifetime. But whenever you're standing in front of those enlarged prints, it becomes more than a retrospective of the life of a nice woman who took some nice photographs. We always knew that these images had a real power to be able to, share the story of the Cherokee Nation in that time. This was the decade just prior to Oklahoma statehood. And it was the nation was undergoing some tremendous change because of that. And we also knew that it was very specific to her experience as a member of the Ross family. Somebody who was more affluent than your average Cherokee, who did not live, certainly did not live in their own Merle home or their own hunter's home, rather. But it's also very telling as to what was happening in Cherokee Nation at that point. So we were very careful about selecting the image images that we did for this show. And I hope that people will come away knowing who she is, understanding a little bit better her contribution to Cherokee Nation as well as the state as we have it today, what she did for Hunter's Home, and also just how she highlights the life of this young Cherokee woman living more than 100 years ago. I think that's very unique and special. And, it's a very unique perspective that needs to be shown and better understood.
Well, in addition to the prints, we also have some of her glass negatives on display. But it's my understanding, Jennifer, that at least one of her original cameras is at the Hunter's Home. Is that on display currently?
It's not on display yet. We had plans pre, everything that went on this summer. We had plans to be able to have an exhibit set up, and we're going to go ahead and do that as well. It's just that the house is closed, so people can't come in to see it. So we're trying to figure out how we get that information out. But yeah, she's got the original camera there at the house.
Okay, great. Well, thank you both for joining me today. As a reminder, the Through the Lens exhibit is on display at the Cherokee National History Museum now through March 20th of next year. The museum is open to the public right now. It's open Tuesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then, as Jennifer mentioned, the Hunter's Home interior is not open right now, but it's my understanding that the grounds are open. So I believe that's Tuesday through Saturday, 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. as well.
Yep.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me. And I hope everybody gets to come out and see the exhibit.
Me too.
Thanks for having
Thank you.
us.
Thank you.